Free agency has begun, and the Celtics are running it all the way back this season. Plus, we open up the mailbag, Kristaps Porzingis recovery, Bronny James. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season. Drop Drew in the mix, and 3 from KP. No, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in Locked On after. Karalis on the breakdown, clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how we started raising business, how we finished. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I got you covered every single day, Monday through Friday, with a free, fresh podcast that drops directly to your device. So make sure you are subscribed. Get to the show on YouTube, get into the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking about the Celtics, what the signings that they've made, the signings other teams have made, all of that stuff on the YouTube page. Let me know. I'm John Karalis, used to play a long time ago. Now I'm covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal as a beat writer. I'm also the author of Built Different, a commemorative book documenting the Celtics' run to a championship. It's available right now at triumphbooks.com/CelticsWin. You can use the code Celtics24 to get 25% off. You can also find it at local bookstores around New England and local places of, pharmacies, supermarkets, place like that. Anyway, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs have gone away. Sports stop sportsing the way that we'd like them to. So FanDuel is hooking everybody up with a boost or bonus every day. So there's something for everybody. Every day, all summer long, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Later on, we'll open up the mailbag. We'll get to Bronny James later. We'll get to KP's recovery, Jordan Walsh, and Joe Mazzulla developing rookies. But let's start with free agency. Free agency has begun. There's been, I don't want to say it's a flurry of moves, but the Celtics did what we expected them to do. They're bringing back basically everybody. There are 12 players from the championship team under contract, which is rare. That never really happens, to bring back that many players. All your top basically 10, and Jordan Walsh is in that mix. Everybody's back for the most part. Luke Kornet, a 1-year deal. Terms not announced, but I assume it's something along the lines. I don't know if it's a minimum, but it's probably not a lot. We'll see. He's coming back. Multi-year contract with Neemias Queta. He's coming back. Sam Hauser, they picked up his team option. He's coming back. So one of the things that we need to understand is the Celtics, they're running it back this year. I don't know what they're going to do next season. That's another conversation for a year from now. And that's going to be super interesting because the Celtics are going to be repeater taxpayers next season. Which means I did the math, which is always dicey with me, but no, I did the math, and a approximately $50 million tax bill, that is what I expect them to be at this year, depending on what else they do. That would be north of $90 million next year. So it's an additional $40+ million or so just in taxes. That's not money that goes to a player. That's money that goes to one of the non-tax paying teams. One of those teams that's under the cap and under the tax, and they get a big chunk of money from teams like the Celtics. So I think because of that, that's why they picked up Sam Hauser's option, and maybe they kick that can down the road. Maybe if you listened to the conversation with Keith Smith last week, and if you haven't, go listen to that because we lay out everything. We might be in a scenario where they just say, hey, we're going to pick up the team option. We're going to see where we are next season, and we'll figure it out. And maybe that means this is Sam Hauser's last year in Boston. And if that's the case, so be it. Things change. And things are going to change in Boston eventually. And that's why it's a 1-year deal for Kornet, and it's a team option for Hauser at this point. And we'll see if they negotiate a team friendly deal after that. But that's why it is what it is. And I expect Neemias Queta's deal to have team options all over the place in that. So they're preparing for the possibility after this season of not tearing it apart, but starting to dip below the tax, or not below the tax necessarily, but down to a point where it's more palatable, right? Because you're not just going to keep spending. And they want to get out from under the second apron. And that's just going to be somewhat important so they don't jeopardize their future. Like at some point, I know it's 7 years away, but 7 years from now, the Celtics are probably going to be in the midst of a rebuild, maybe just coming out of a rebuild, but somewhere along the way here, a rebuild is happening. Look, 7 years from now, Tatum and Brown are going to be in their early 30s. They're going to be like, we're going to start to see their games maybe decline in 7 years. Like that's going to be a point where the Celtics are going to have to start making decisions. Do you trade one of those guys? Are you at a point where it's like they become the Pierce and Garnett and you trade them and start getting assets and you start rebuilding and you go through that hard kind of quick pivot to the next version of this? And I don't know who's going to be in the draft 7 years from now, but that's something that you have to prepare for. You just have to make sure that you're not screwing yourselves over. And if you're bad and your draft pick still ends up down at 30, you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So all of this is to say that the part of the reason why this summer is what it is for Boston and why things are being structured this way is with an eye towards the future, because you just have to make sure, like, you don't have to worry about anything besides this year, right? I don't have to worry about anything besides this year, but Brad Stevens has to have a long-term view. Small, short-term view, medium-term view, long-term view. That's all part of a GM's job. And I'm going to talk about the long-term view too, because that impacts some of the short-term stuff. And as much as you don't care, it is part of the discussion. So that's what the Celtics did. They shored up the end of the bench to a degree. There's a couple of, like, O'Shea Brissett's probably gone. Shvi Mikhailuk is probably gone. They're bringing in Baylor Shireman, who will hopefully compete for a roster spot. And there's 2 ways that they have to fill and all of that stuff. So the Celtics are running it back. The Celtics are running it all the way back. We'll have to watch the competition because Paul George is leaving the Clippers, and we'll talk about this when it happens. If Paul George leaves the Clippers, well, he is leaving the Clippers, but if he goes to Philly, and now you're talking about Maxey, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and they added Eric Gordon, and they added Andre Drummond. That's a team that's, if they do add Paul George, that's not nothing. The Knicks are trying to reload. They look better. The Sixers are going to look better. I don't know what the Bucks are going to do, but the East is trying to knock off the Celtics. They're trying to load up and knock the Celtics off. So the next couple of days are going to be worth watching. There's going to be some interesting decisions. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to Orlando. That makes Orlando better. He's a good defender. He's a wing guy, a versatile guy. They're tough. They play the Celtics fairly well. Their toughness is, physicality is tough for Boston, or has been. And, he makes shots. That's an interesting decision there for the Nuggets to let him go, and a good pickup for Orlando. So things are starting to line up in the East where, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have to reassess this and say, where are the Celtics here? Like, I mean, look, the Celtics are going to be the favorites no matter what. The question is, how close do the other teams get? How close are the Knicks really? How close are the Sixers really? How close are these other teams really? That's going to be the question. And we'll have to reevaluate that whenever that comes around. For people watching on YouTube, I do have this belt graphic. I swear I'm gonna get used to using it because the Celtics are the champs. I got to make sure I use that graphic. For people listening, sorry. There's a graphic that I like, and whenever there's a championship belt involved, I'm in. So my birthday's coming up. I should put an Amazon wish list item out there for like a WWE championship belt. Wow, that would be a hell of a move, huh? I can just go buy my own, but I'd just go put a wish list out there. All right, let's come back. Mailbag time. I do a mailbag Monday, every Monday now in the off season. Abbreviated version because free agency took over part of it, but it wasn't enough to fill a whole podcast. So mailbag coming up, starting with Joe Mazzulla and developing rookies. We'll talk about that next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Sports, they're the best. But summer, sports start to change. NBA is gone. Hey, we got the Olympics coming up. That's going to be fun. We get, NBA players playing basketball. That's going to be great. But, hockey's done. Major sports kind of, they wind down a little bit. But FanDuel is hooking up everybody this summer because they're giving out bonuses daily, a boost daily. That's right. Something for everybody every day, all summer long. You got to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to start making the most of your summer. You can bet on anything you want. You got the lines, you got the spreads there, you got the player props, you got anything you want. You can bet on the WNBA. I just checked out Connecticut at Phoenix, which is a game I'm going to be watching tomorrow night. Got to wrap up the podcast before Connecticut goes and plays Phoenix. Connecticut's 1.5 favorites with Phoenix playing on the back-to-back. 1.5 on the road at Phoenix. Tough loss. Might be worth taking. Go check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Make sure you're using their tools so you can set your limits, set your budget, and you can have fun gambling responsibly. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all the big stories. It's all the big shows. It's all the big conversations without the fake debates. So go check it out. Streaming all day, every day. Put it on, leave it on, and get away from those big networks. They're just trying to trick you into watching anyway. So go have some fun listening to Locked On Sports today. It's better. All right, mailbag time. Mailbag questions come in at johnkaralis.com/mailbag. That's johnkaralis.com/mailbag. I always get tons of questions. I'm sorry I can't get to all of them, but maybe as things start to slow down, maybe I do multiple mailbags. But yeah, johnkaralis.com/mailbag to go submit your questions, like Jonathan did, who said, one concern I have about this next season is whether Joe Mazzulla will focus at all on developing the draft picks in the lower end of the roster. Do you think that is at all part of his skill set? I didn't see it this year. Well, let me just start by saying, Jonathan, you saw him win a championship this year. So who cares about him developing Shvi Mikhailuk and those guys? That's not what that's about. But I get the question about you want development, but that's what the assistant coaches are for. And that's what they are doing. That's what the G League is for. And that's what that coaching staff is for. There's development for players that goes beyond what Joe Mazzulla is doing. There's an entire structure to develop these players. So, yeah, Jordan Walsh, those guys, they're going to get a lot of the same development at a different level. But this is like blaming a president for something that, is at much lower levels of the government. Joe Mazzulla's focus is on winning these basketball games. And don't sit there and think he's not playing these guys, therefore he's not developing these guys. That you can it's not about just playing games. I it's a very it is a very American thing for people to say you got to play to develop, where you look overseas and it's practicing to develop. And I think what Mazzulla does is he focuses on practice. But when the team is good, whenever a team is good, you're not going to see these guys play. Why is a guy like Jordan Walsh going to play during a season when they won 64 games? It's just not going to that's not what the focus is. He played a ton in the G League. That's where he should be playing, and that's where the development happens. So you don't see it, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. Greg says, do you expect to see Jordan Walsh get more of a role in the team if a player like O'Shea Brissett signs with somebody else? It depends where Jordan is in his development. He's certainly got a lot of homework. He has to get stronger. He has to play with a little bit more control. He just seems if the volume is max volume is at 10, he sometimes plays at like an 11.5, which means it's just a little too loud. You just bring it down to like, a 10, or like an 8 and be able to turn it up to a 10 sometimes. Like it's just about playing under control a little bit more, getting that jump shot down and developing into, at the very least, a 3-and-D player, a legit 3-and-D player, which maybe he'll be more than that. Maybe he won't be that, but that's at least the goal. So he has to spend a lot of time working on his jumper. And if he can come into camp with, I know it's going to be over the summer, it's going to be muscle watch for him. But if he's able to add, 10 pounds of muscle or whatever it is, or however, 2 pounds of muscle will look significant on Jordan Walsh. He's a skinny kid, but that's okay. A lot of kids are skinny at that age, like 19 years old. It's a skinny time. Believe it or not, I was skinny at 19 too. Not anymore, but once upon a time, that's what being 19 is all about. But he definitely needs to add some muscle so he can like be a better defender. But how the muscle is added, all of that stuff, we'll see. And if he can come back this summer with noticeable improvement, then he has a chance. If not, it'll be another year developing in the G League, and we go from there. But that's what he needs to do. So I can't say for sure that he's going to get a role now. He does have an opportunity, but it's more about the kind of development that he has over the summer. Paolo says, with Shireman being guaranteed, presumably Watson on a 2-way, Kornet back, Tillman maybe back, how about bringing Javonte Green on a minimum contract? I'm going to guess that Javonte is going to want more playing time than what the Celtics can offer. But if he is available on a minimum contract, you could definitely do worse. He is friends with Jayson Tatum, and we'd love it. I'd love it. I think Boston would love it. It's if he's willing to accept the role here, and that means probably not playing all the time, but some of the time, he'd be like the new O'Shea Brissett. So I'm gonna guess that Javonte is gonna want other opportunities, better opportunities, but if he's around and wants to sign with Boston, I'm all in on that. NJ says it's reported that Kristaps Porzingis underwent successful surgery. Now he mentions, NJ mentions that Doc Rivers said it took Damian Lillard a while to get back back into shape. Do you expect Porzingis to experience something having similarly no off season? Well, look, a couple of things. Number one, Doc Rivers is making excuses. So let's not give Doc the, too much credence. Like he's making excuses for a lot of things. So that's number one. Is Porzingis going to experience something similar? Maybe, but I think what the Celtics are doing when they announce that 5 to 6 month timeline, I think the recovery from the surgery is probably 3 months, and the ramp up is going to take another couple of months. The getting him through rehab, strengthening, getting him, like, we'll see him probably like 3 months is what? July, August, September. So that's the end of September, right? He just had it at the end of June. 1 month is July, August is 2, September is 3, which means October, at the end of October, training camp is 4. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him shooting, doing some drills, much like his recovery over, from the calf strain. And then from there, we'll see, like, oh, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, he's out here shooting. It's training camp. It's the beginning of the season. Maybe he's going to travel with us. Maybe not. I would expect not for that because it's not the playoffs. Just keep him back in Boston and let him keep rehabbing. But regardless, I would expect him to be ramping up and slowly building to the return. So even though it's going to be October where we see him start to shoot and start to get out there and start to move, and we're going to be like, oh, he doesn't look too bad. He's not limping. He's blah, 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 blah. But it's going to take extra time for him to strengthen, get his cardio, get his comfort level, do some scrimmaging and all of that stuff. So I think that's why the timeline is what it is. And so I don't expect the same kind of troubles, whatever troubles Damian Lillard had. All right, let's come back. We'll get some fun, talk about championship rings, talk about the theme song. We'll talk about Bronny James. It's all coming up next. All right, let's get back into the mailbag here. Todd asks, with all this talk about Bronny James' agent telling the rest of the league not to draft him, why wouldn't the Celtics appear to show interest so the Lakers would have to trade up a few spots? Why didn't they? The Celtics could have acquired future draft capital. This is a very popular theory. It's Bill Simmons was pushing this. A lot of people were pushing this. The bottom line is I don't think NBA teams value Bronny as an NBA talent. Like, if it wasn't the Lakers and LeBron, I don't know that he would have been drafted. But it was important for them, for LeBron, to have that moment. And look what happened. LeBron said, I'm going to opt out, and he's open to taking significantly less so the Lakers can try to bring in Klay Thompson, who is leaving the Golden State Warriors. And if they can bring in Klay Thompson in a sign and trade, and LeBron takes a significant pay cut in order to add a Klay Thompson to that team, well, then drafting Bronny was really worth it, wasn't it? But he doesn't have that same value on the Celtics. It doesn't. The Celtics can draft him, and the Lakers would be like, we're not trading for him. Like, or they could try, but like at some point there's like they're not going to give up a ton to get LeBron. Like LeBron, they could just go to LeBron and be like, look, man, we were going to take him, but Boston took him. We have to go a different direction, and that's going to be it. So I don't think the Celtics or any other team wanted to get stuck. Like, it wasn't just the Celtics that had an opportunity. All those other picks in the second round, the picks in the 40-somethings, in the 50s before Boston, any of those teams could have taken Bronny and been like, hey, LA, why don't you trade for him? Nobody wanted him. Like nobody wanted to take that. No one wanted to mess with no one wanted to bother, because if the Lakers said, all right, fine, sorry, no, we're not trading for him. We're not, you can have him. And if that's a wasted draft pick. That would be the waste of a draft pick. Roy asks, do you think the Celtics will give Lamar and Delano championship rings? So Lamar Stevens, Delano Banton. Do you think they're going to get championship rings? I think so. I think you have to get permission from the league to give rings to players who didn't finish the season, which is never really an issue. They were part of the team for a long time. They were there through the trade deadline. I'm sure they're going to get something. So I would expect them to get rings. I think anybody that's been on the team especially for a significant amount of time would get a ring. So yeah, I think both of those guys are in line, and I think both of those guys deserve it. They were part of the team. Like those end of bench guys, they still have value. They have to be in practices and practice against the main guys. Like you still need those guys to go push your main guys, and they are as much part of the team as anybody, and have developed relationships on that team, and so they worked hard, and yeah, they deserve rings, and I think they'll get them. And finally, Peter asks, with Banner 18, when will you have a competition for a new theme song? Any requests for vibes or references? I think I'm just going to get Be Ever Ready to do a new version, because he just did the one that we recently unveiled. I think we're going to have to rework it. And I think there's going to be a new style of open that's shorter. So it's going to change a little bit of the production value. So it's going to change what he says, and it's going to be a very quick verse. It's probably not even really much of a verse, but we'll figure it out. Be Ever Ready is really good. He's worked with us a bunch. He's working on this now, actually. And at some point here, maybe over the summer, some point, we'll hopefully by the beginning of the season, we'll have it all worked out. So yes, there will be some new theme music. Somehow we will do it and have it ready. And it's just, a good problem to have, a nice challenge for Be Ever Ready. Again, if you want to submit your questions for Mailbag, it's johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Submit your questions. I will try every Monday to get, what did I get? Probably like 9-10 questions in. I definitely get more than 9 or 10 questions in the mailbag. So I apologize if I don't get to all of them. I try to include questions that are indicative of multiple questions. So multiple people have asked questions similar to what I've used. So make sure you're, get them in, and I'll try my best to get them on there. Thank you so much for everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. And I would love it now if you share the podcast. Once you're subscribed, get in there and now tell everybody else that they should be doing the same thing and that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.